welcome to my channel. Today's story is for my high RPM USA fans. This is a new original story. You won't hear it anywhere else. We produce these stories especially for our high RPM fans, because we know how much you love stories like this. Stories that are deeply emotional, completely unique, deeply human, and never repeated. And all of our high RPM stories follow this format. A solid 40-minute video with natural-sounding dialogues that feel real and true, a clear and strong moral, a reflection of the American lifestyle, and a story that's divided into 4 extended paragraphs for easy editing. If you enjoy this high RPM story, please support us. Join our membership community. It's completely free, and you can learn more about our studio and team, as well as gain access to perks such as early access to videos, access to our private Discord server, and more. The old woman bent down to water the row of pansies on the windowsill, their deep purple blooms reflecting the sadness in her own heart. Helen Moore was 61 years old and had spent most of those years in Benton Falls, Indiana, a small town where houses were neatly lined up along tree-shaded streets, and the local football team had won state championships 5 times in the last decade. She lived in a quaint 2-story house on Maple Street with a white picket fence and neatly trimmed rose bushes, the kind of house that looked like it belonged in a storybook. But inside its walls, Helen felt anything but bookish. She missed her husband Gary terribly. They had met in high school. He was the star quarterback and she was the head cheerleader. And their love had only grown stronger with time. After graduating, they had come back to Benton Falls and bought the building that housed Moore's Coffee and Books, which had been Gary's lifelong dream. Together, they poured their hearts and souls into the shop, creating a cozy corner with creaky wooden floors, mismatched chairs, and shelves stacked with well-loved books. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans always lingered in the air, mingling with the musty smell of old paperbacks. For 20 years, the coffee shop had been their shared canvas, a testament to their enduring love. Then, 2 years ago, Gary had passed away from a sudden heart attack, leaving Helen alone in a house filled with memories and a shop that was slowly losing customers. Unable to bear the sight of the empty chair where Gary would sit each morning, sipping his coffee and reading the newspaper, she had locked up the shop and returned into her home surrounded by photos of Gary and their 2 grown children who had moved away to college. She had spent her days watering her roses, baking apple pies, and drinking tea in silence. However, the quiet was getting to her, and she knew she had to do something. With a deep breath, she dusted off the counter, wiped down the tables, and placed a vase of fresh lilies on the windowsill, Gary's favorite. As she unlocked the front door, the bell above it tinkled merrily, echoing the hopeful tune in her heart. Across the street, the young man tucked his worn leather notebook under his arm and took a sip of his takeaway coffee. His name was Eli Carter, and he was a struggling writer who had recently moved to Benton Falls in search of peace and inspiration. He had been nursing a broken heart ever since his mother had passed away, and the quiet charm of the town had offered him a solace he had not found in his bustling city life. Each morning, he would sit on a nearby bench and watch as the old woman opened her shop, her movements slow and graceful like the unfolding of a well-loved story. They had never spoken, but there was a shared understanding between them. Their mornings had become a ritual, a quiet companionship that transcended words. As the days turned into weeks, Ellen began to notice the young man sitting across the street. His hair was a mess of unruly brown curls, and his eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held a depth of sadness that mirrored her own. One day, gathering her courage, she crossed the street during her lunch break, surprising the young man with her sudden appearance. "Good morning," she said, her voice as gentle as the chime of the shop's bell. "I couldn't help but notice you've been sitting here every day," she added, her eyes curious. "I'm Ellen." The young man looked up, startled by her sudden presence. "Oh, hello," he stammered, quickly tucking his notebook behind his back. "I'm Eli. I just come here to write," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm a writer," he added hastily, as if fearing she might judge him for his solitude. "Me too," Ellen said softly, realizing that their shared love for writing had brought them together. "I'm sure you're very good," she added, wanting to encourage the young man who seemed so lost in his own world. Eli blushed, embarrassed by his earlier reaction. "I'm not very good, actually," he confessed, his voice laced with "That's not true," Ellen insisted, sensing his despair. "You have a gift, Eli. I can tell." And so began an unlikely friendship between the elderly widow and the young aspiring writer. Every morning they would meet at the coffee shop, sharing stories and dreams over steaming cups of coffee. Ellen spoke of her late husband, Gary, whose memory lingered in the shop like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Eli listened, his eyes filled with admiration for the love they had shared. And as the weeks passed, he began to open up to her, revealing his own dreams and fears. Ellen, in turn, found solace in Eli's company, her grief slowly lifting as she watched him grow more confident and at ease. She saw in him the same spark that had once burned brightly in Gary, and it gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, life could go on even after the greatest of losses. As the seasons changed and the leaves turned from green to gold, Moore's Coffee and Books became a hub of activity. Students studying for exams, retirees reading the newspaper, and young mothers meeting their friends filled the shop with lively chatter. On chilly autumn evenings, the air filled with the aroma of cinnamon and cloves, as Ellen and Eli baked cookies and prepared hot apple cider. They would stand side by side at the counter, their laughter echoing in the cozy space. One afternoon, a group of teenagers entered the coffee shop, their eyes shining with mischief. "We're bored," one of them announced, kicking a chair for emphasis. "There's nothing to do in this town," another chimed in, slumping onto a sofa. Hearing their complaints, Ellen had an idea. "Why don't you all stay here and help me organize a story night?" she suggested, hoping to inject some excitement into their lives. The teenagers looked at each other, then back at Ellen, their boredom giving way to intrigue. "What do we have to do?" one of them asked, curiosity replacing his earlier apathy. And so every Thursday evening, young and old gathered at Moore's Coffee and Books to share stories, poems, and jokes. The coffee shop, once a place of quiet solitude, became a hub of community, its walls echoing with the laughter and voices of those who had found solace within its doors. On a crisp October evening, as the town gathered for their weekly storing night, a hush fell over the room. It was Eli's turn to read, and he had chosen a story inspired by Ellen and Gary's enduring love. His voice trembled slightly at first, but as he delved into the tale, his confidence grew. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. People wiped tears from their eyes, their hearts touched by the raw emotion in Eli's words. Afterwards, as the townspeople mingled and chatted, Ellen felt a surge of pride for the young man who had found his voice in the most unexpected of places. She knew that Gary, with his quiet wisdom and gentle humor, would have been proud of Eli and the story they had become a part of. In the weeks that followed, the story nights continued, becoming a beloved tradition in Benton Falls. Eli's writing flourished, his words flowing onto the pages of his notebooks, finding their home in the hearts of those who heard them. The coffee shop, once teetering on the edge of closure, now bustled with activity, its shelves stocked with new books, its tables filled with eager listeners. And Ellen, standing by the window, watching the town come together, knew that Gary would have smiled down on them all, content in the knowledge that his dream had become a reality, a place where stories unfolded and hearts found solace, one cup of coffee at a time.